Welcome to the Meijer Clinics podcast, and you just heard a quote from one of your hosts, Dr. Lisa Day. Join our licensed clinical professionals from various backgrounds as they discuss fascinating mental health topics with a wide range of guests. Meijer Clinics is a Christian counseling organization with multiple clinics nationwide dedicated to treating the whole person, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Welcome to our listening family. We thank you for joining us.
Welcome to another edition of Roundtable Discussions with Dr. Paul Meijer. Paul, good evening.
How you doing?
I'm good. We have a very special guest on the show tonight. She's the program director for one of our network podcasts, The Clinical Christian, Molly Messer. Molly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited, and our audience is going to be so excited about what we're talking about tonight because we are talking about holidays and stress. Anything that has to do with the holidays. So we really want to try to touch base and try to reach out to our listeners and let them know they've got our support over the season, and that we certainly understand that it can be a really happy time for some people, but it can also be extremely stressful for others. So why don't we start with Paul, since we do our roundtable discussions with Paul. Paul, what are some of your thoughts around the holidays? And first of all, how was your holiday experience? Are you generally happy at the holidays, or does it get on your nerves?
Yeah.
Or what's it like for you? Okay, both.
No, it's a happy time. It's a happy time. My wife and I always we live in Texas, but we go to Florida almost every Christmas and have two kids there with grandkids. And, so we spend time with the kids and the grandkids and, just have a lot of good fellowship time and things. But there's always stress too.
Sure.
You don't know how much to spend on presents, and, we made an agreement to cut back this year, all of us, as family members, and not all the adults exchange with all the adults like we usually do, and emphasize more just giving presents to the kids. And there's just a lot of things at Christmas. There's more depression at Christmas. Usually we've got a day program where people come from around the country that are suffering from depression and bad enough where they can't function at work or things like that. And people stay 7 hours a day, 5 days a week for 3 weeks, and then they get a lot better in 3 weeks. And usually I have 1 or 2 admissions a week where we add people to the day program. And I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 this week. And we got 2 more lined up for Monday. And so we're getting swamped because it's almost Christmas season.
Yeah.
And, you see, TV specials or different things, and hear the nice songs, Christmas songs and all that. So a lot of families are happy, or at least pretend to be. And, so people that came from abusive childhoods, feel more sad at Christmas because it brings back negative memories for them. Or if you lost somebody at Christmas time, if one of your close relatives or good friends died at Christmas time in the past, it could be a downer. And there's just so many issues, and the three of us will just, let's just bring them up. There's so many issues: presents versus no presents, and the meaning of Christmas, and how much should we get Christ in the middle of Christmas, and then we're going to talk some about New Year's too, and whether you ought to have New Year's resolutions, and what kind of resolutions to have, and who you hang out with on New Year's Eve, and single
my
people
dog.
at Christmas,
my dog,
single parents at Christmas, yeah, your dog, Hanukkah, our Jewish friends celebrate Hanukkah at the Christmas season, and how that was due to a Maccabean revolt in 167 BC to try to, free the temple and things like that. And so they have a special 8-day celebration, and even where the first Christmas tree came from, it was Martin Luther that put up a tree, because he went out in the woods and at Christmas time and noticed that pine trees pointed up to the sky toward heaven, and so he cut one down and brought it in his house. That was pretty cool.
Oh wow, what a cool little fact.
Well,
there's just a lot of, and why do we exchange presents at Christmas? And it started out commemorating the gold incense and myrrh brought by the wise men to Jesus. And so people started exchanging a gift to remember those 3 wise men. And then now Christmas has turned into a, $1 trillion materialism party. So anyway, those are just topics. So let's just bat it around and talk about some of them, whatever comes to your mind.
I feel so much better about you saying that the Christmas tree story, because I normally get a tree that's maybe 5 to 6 feet tall. This year I got one that's supposed to be 6 to 7, but I think it was probably about 9 feet tall.
Oh my goodness.
I got these guys to bring it up to my apartment, and they're like, "Do you want us to help put it in the stand?" I'm like, no problem, So I get this thing, and I'm like, somehow I got it up, and it's perfectly straight, and it's literally taking up a quarter of my living room.
Oh my gosh.
But talking about family time and stuff like that, for me, because I'm single and my family's all up north, I typically don't go and spend Christmas with them. So it's just me, basically. So what I do is I try to do things that make me enjoy Christmas more. And, the Christmas tree thing was always a really big thing in my family, and my dad, that was the one thing that he always made sure he did, no matter how old he got. And, so it reminds me of my dad. So there's the happy part of it, but then there's also there's sadness because I was very close with him. And so it's this mixture of emotions, just like you were saying. There's good and there's bad, and there's, everything in between that everybody is going through, and then we have the stress of the
How long ago did your dad die, Molly?
5.5 years ago. So
5.5 years ago.
He lived, and he had, stage 3 lung cancer and was diagnosed in November and passed away by June of the next year. So it was really quick.
But Christmas was a special time for you and him.
Absolutely. I mean, for all of us in our family in general, I have several siblings, and, the Christmas tree in and of itself, that was always the thing, the trip to the lot to pick one out. And, my dad picking out trees that are, he picked out this tree that must have been 16 feet tall one year. And it was just me and him. That by that point I was, everyone, I was home from college, but everyone else had moved out. And wow, that was,
so you miss him at Christmas time, especially.
Absolutely. When I see a tree, when I see a train, because he always had a train into the tree, everything. Yeah.
I remember one time I woke up Christmas morning, and that's when my kids were young. And I was excited, and I thought, well, we're going to open some presents, and I always had a little Bible study about, Jesus' birth and why we celebrate Christmas, but I wouldn't spend more than about 10 minutes on it because, the kids wanted the presents, and I didn't want to get them ticked off. But all of a sudden, so I was real happy and everything, and all of a sudden I felt like crying. I just felt real sad, and I had no idea why. So I went in a different room all by myself, and I thought about it, and I prayed about it, and it dawned on me that I really missed my dad, who had died maybe about 6 or 7 years earlier. But I really missed my dad at Christmas. And so I just, I prayed for a minute or two and had a good cry. And then I felt great again. I got it out of my system and I felt great again. I went back out and joined the family. But our listening family, we want you to know that if there's some moments during this next month that's coming up, with Christmas and New Year's, and there's some time that you feel sadness, and it's because of missing somebody that either died at Christmas or died any time, but you wish they were there for Christmas. Then it's normal and it's fine, and we grieve when somebody dies, but then we re-grieve, even years later, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a funny Christmas tree story, and then I'll share some other thoughts. But so, Molly, the Christmas tree was always a big deal at my grandmother's house, which is where we used to spend our Christmases. And they had an estate, and it was this beautiful home that had been in Southern living. And my grandmother was just like the queen of Christmas. I mean, she just, you can't imagine the extravagant, door pieces made out of real fruit and pomegranates, and this woman was just talented. I mean, it was beautiful. So we lived out on a big farm, and she had 5 children. My mom was the oldest, and she was the only girl, and then there were 4 brothers. Well, when all the 4 brothers would get home, because my mom and dad and my brother and I all lived on the farm, but the rest of the brothers had moved away. So when all the brothers would get home for Christmas, they would literally, and this was a farm, this was a real working farm. It still is a working farm. So my grandfather had lots of tractors. So they would all go out into the woods and look for, I don't even know how tall this tree was, but inside the home, when you walked into the home, there was 2 huge front doors on the front of the home. And when you walked in, there was this huge foyer, and it went all the way up to the ceiling. And that tree went all the way up to the ceiling. This is like a tree. This is not a Christmas tree. This is a tree that they would cut down and bring into the house. I'm not kidding. There were there were French doors on the back of the house, and that's where they would have to open the French doors to bring the tree in. Anyway, they found this beautiful tree, bring it back up to the farm with the tractor. They chain it up and drag it. And every year there was a pond that separated my parents' home from my grandmother's house, and there was a bridge over top of it. I mean, this is like, Gone with the Wind style stuff, right? So they would bring the tree back, and they would put the base of the tree in the pond. And then literally, 2 days or so before Christmas, we would bring it in, and everyone would decorate it and have treats and everything. So it was this big, big to-do. Well, my grandmother was always funny about people coming and everything having to look just right. So she had asked my dad to cut around the pond. Well, my dad forgot. He forgot that the tree was there, and it had gotten pretty grassy, and he ran over the tree with the mower, with his tractor mower, and literally mowed down this tree that they had spent. I mean, my father almost got disowned from the family, I'm telling you, but everything worked out fine. They just turned the mowed off part to the back, and no one could really see it. I don't think my grandmother ever really forgave him for that. So it's just something I'll never forget. And I also won't forget just the special event that she spent so much time making. We would all have brunch on Christmas Day, and I mean, it was 25 people around a table, and every year we would all get silver dollars and lotto tickets. And so we would all sit and scratch our lotto tickets with our brand new silver dollars. And she just did all sorts of neat stuff like that. So, and there's people, the audience has heard me talk about my grandmother sometimes, and we don't have contact with her anymore, unfortunately, due to some things that happened. But even now at Christmas, even though we live a very different Christmas now, because we kind of went from spending Christmas with this huge family to it just being my mom, dad, my brother, and I, which was this huge change. Which was very hard at the beginning, but my mom always made a big effort to try to, make things for us. But even now, I can kind of think back to good things, I guess, about my grandmother. Even though there's this horrid past there, those are the types of things that were good memories, and I really appreciated that she had that talent, because I've definitely picked up on it, and I spent a lot of time in my own home decorating and such. And for me, I mean, to this day, and I guess this really just continues as my spiritual life matures, but every single Christmas, I literally get so excited that I'm giddy, because it's Jesus' birthday. Like on Christmas Eve night, I have this excitement inside of me that is just, I can't even describe it. Because that's what Christmas, that's what Christmas Eve is. And then I always get this huge excitement, about what it represents. But I too, lost my brother. It's been 2009. So gosh, it's been 8 years. So it's definitely a time where we miss him. He was a huge personality, and he was a jokester. So our Christmases are just a lot more quiet. But I remember the first Christmas, because he passed away in September, and that first Christmas was just so heavy. I mean, I don't know if it was like that for you, Molly, with your dad, but I just remember that like feeling in my gut of just feeling like there was a cinder block in my gut. It was just, you don't even know what to do. You don't even really know how to act. You want to be happy, but it feels weird to be happy. I mean, that talking about just conflicting feelings surrounding the holidays, I think is so, even someone that really enjoys Christmas, which is me, I'm a Christmas freak, I can still I don't get stressed out. I don't care about long lines. I'm just like in this la la land when Christmas comes, right? I just don't get upset. But then it's like that Christmas letdown. So then after Christmas and New Year's, and then you start the new year, and you're like, wait a minute, like, where's all the excitement? I'm taking all my trees down. My house looks bare. It's dark and gray outside. You know what I mean? You
got credit cards to pay off.
Exactly. You're broke. You spent too much money. I mean, I just, holidays are just complicated. They're just complicated, unfortunately.
What are some things, Melanie and Molly, what are some things that people can do to reduce stress especially at Christmas time? What things come to your mind?
Well, if you're in Miami, you can just leave and you'll feel better.
Go to a small town.
You can go somewhere else because it's really stressful here. People get frenzied. For me, I try not to get too caught up in all of the gift giving, and maybe it's, to the other end of the spectrum that people think I don't really care, but I do. It's just that I don't have the bandwidth to get, in the middle of lines and people I find as I get older, belongings and things like that are just not as important. So I try not to stress too much about making things happen for people. I think part of that goes with me maturing in my Christian faith and, just having a different perspective about it than I did when I was younger,
A lot of people feel like a nobody and go through life trying to prove that they're not a nobody. And they do that through sex, power, and money. But at Christmas time, there's a lot of people that are really insecure that spend tons of money so they can outdo their neighbors. So it's a pride thing. Mm-hmm. So it can be giving a lot of presents. Sometimes can be a wrong thing to do, an immoral thing to do. And other times it can be a good thing to do. If God's blessed you, Ecclesiastes says, if God's blessed you with great wealth, then enjoy it, but don't live for it.
Right.
So not being too materialistic at Christmas is one. And another one that I can think of is, don't go to the stores when there's so many, lines and crowds that it takes you forever and you get frustrated. Go when the first minute that they open in the morning or during a weekday. Don't go on at rush hour, and don't, you can avoid lines by being wise about it. And then another thing that I think of being a psychiatrist is I've got some patients who were, a lot of patients who were really abused in their family of origin.
Yeah.
Physically abused, sexually abused, verbally abused. And then they feel obligated to go be home with those abusive people at Christmas. And I tell them, don't be obligated to. And they say, well, what about the verse that says children obey your parents? Well, what it says in the Greek is little children obey your parents. It doesn't say adult children obey your parents. And you should honor your parents in one way or another, no matter how old they are. But honoring them doesn't mean you have to go be with them. So if you have abusive relatives, don't go be with them at Christmas. Avoid them, So that's another thing people can do at Christmas to avoid a lot of stress.
Yeah, I think when I would go home, oftentimes, before I really had a good handle on my illness, I have bipolar. I would go home and I would be triggered by my whole family. Just, it's like somehow you fall back into that person that you were 20 years ago when you were a kid, or however many years ago when you were a kid. Much more than 20 for me, but you would. I felt myself falling into that trap of like, I'm the one that everyone always picks on, and my siblings like jumping in on that same thing, like they were all falling into the same roles again, and that made it really, really hard. And so I got to the point where I could like see what was happening, That's
a really great point. We learned in psychiatry residency that even when you have patients that are really maturing and doing great, clients that are really making progress and all that, then they go home for Christmas and everything falls apart because we regress. Whatever role you played in your family of origin, if you were the victim or whatever your role was in your family of origin, when you get together with your family at Christmas, we tend to automatically revert to those roles and we don't even know we're doing it. And so we can all regress, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I think that happens so much in families. We all fall back into the roles that we play, and if you don't fall back into that role, then sometimes there's a lot of grief and strife from family members for sure. I know, in thinking about family members, I think back and I think I don't think any of the men especially, I don't know that I ever saw any of them not with some type of alcohol in their hand the entire time they were there, from mimosas in the morning until, liquor in the evening and beer in between. But so I think a lot of times, even people that maybe are in recovery from being an addict, I think sometimes, that going home and being triggered and all those things probably make it real difficult to stay out of, addiction and not, quote, falling off the wagon. But going home for so many people can be difficult. And then you just have the simple, when you have your own family and you have children, who wants to leave on Christmas Day? Especially if you have to travel, like what kid wants to leave their presents if you got presents and go travel to a family member's? And I was very lucky and that my parents, the day doesn't matter. We can celebrate with them whenever it's convenient, whenever. They would never want either of my sons to have to leave their toys just to travel to come and be there with them. So I was very lucky that I had parents like that, but I have lots of friends that you were expected to be there. And if you weren't there, then you were, someone was mad. And I think that's a big pressure on people. Some days these poor parents have stayed up all night trying to get ready for Christmas, and then the next day they're traveling 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, probably even more than that for some people, just to be. And some people want to do that; they want to be with family, and I think that's fine. But I oftentimes think there's a lot of familial stress that goes over. Well, you should come here, and no, you shouldn't come here, and why didn't you come to so-and-so's? And, it just seems
so don't let
absurd.
people guilt trip you.
Exactly. Right. So just have boundaries. Make boundaries surrounding the holiday. Make a decision about how you want to spend your holiday. Let everyone else know that's how you're going to spend it. and then spend it that way. And don't
you know, another thing.
bugged.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
just don't
another
get
thing.
bugged in so many
What?
directions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that what you said reminded me of is there's usually a company Christmas party, there's a neighborhood Christmas party, there's a Sunday school Christmas party, and if you're in a bridge club or a gourmet club or whatever kind of clubs that you're in, they all have their parties. And another thing that I have to do is decide, which parties am I going to go to and which ones am I not going to go to. And some people may be disappointed, but, that I'm not there, but it's just, you got to be reasonable with how busy you get, especially if you have kids at home, and you're gone every third night for another Christmas party.
Yeah.
It's
hard.
I want to add on the opposite end of the spectrum, from the point of view of a single woman who, spends a lot of Christmases alone, a lot of holidays, different holidays by myself. I don't want any of the listeners to feel like the people who have to spend Christmas alone or do that they're being left out, because they certainly aren't. I struggle with that. I struggled for a long time adapting from going from a big family Christmas to, okay, wow, now it's just me. Like, this is so hard because I'm so used to having everybody around. And then I also, for a long time, I went through this process of all of my other family members have their own families, and it's just me. And then always, I wish there was somebody that I could spend Christmas with. Those kinds of feelings I struggle with a lot. I don't struggle with them as much in the last few years as I have in the years prior, but it certainly is something as a single person who's not married that I struggle with. And when I go to parties and people give me gifts at work, I just go, do you mind if I just keep this? Because I don't really have a gift to open on Christmas morning. So I'm just going to keep it and put it under my tree.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
To make it special, So I go, okay, I have at least one thing. And, I just try to create, even though I can't recreate all of my family traditions, I try to just do a few.
Do you have any siblings that live near you?
No, they all live up in Illinois, Wisconsin, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So,
I've got
from time to time I'll go and visit them, at different times I'll go. But the ones that are where I know I can't go because of finances or because of other obligations, then it's hard to make myself get through that time. But for me, it's the one thing I'm always going to do is get a tree, that's what makes me, I think about my dad, and when he struggled through the holidays, after he lost his mother and stuff. And I think about that and how he always put the tree up, and there's just something about doing just one thing, be it a tree, be it one tradition that you can sort of have that be your stabilizing thing, I guess, weird way to say it, but that be a stabilizing thing that you do every year. So there's consistency, particularly if you're by yourself, build a tradition for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that helps.
A lot of churches have a Christmas Eve short service, an hour-long service where they light candles and, they turn the lights out and one person lights a candle and then they spread it and it spreads all the way through the congregation and do things like that. That might be something neat for a single person to do too.
Hi, this is Dr. Paul Meijer of the Meijer Clinics. Our Christian counselors across the country have a goal of helping all those who come to us to become what God has called them to be. If you're in a situation where you're not at peace within yourself, or you just feel like there's joy that's missing in your life, we can come alongside to help you obtain peace and joy.
This message is sponsored by the Meijer Clinic Foundation, a nonprofit Christian counseling ministry. The number is 1-888-7-CLINIC, 1-888-7-CLINIC.
We always went to candlelight services. This is something else I'm sure our listeners can relate to. I remember the first Christmas after being divorced, and my family had always had a mother and a father to open presents with in the morning. And the first Christmas that we had after I got divorced, my little guy was too small to really understand, and he is autistic, so he really just didn't understand what was going on. But my older son was 11, I think, the first Christmas that I was divorced. And that morning when he was opening presents and it was just he and I and my little guy, my heart broke that morning for him. Because it was just lonely. I felt like I knew he missed his dad. And just having that other presence there, and there were things that we used to do as a family. So that I was just so hurt for him that he was having to experience that. So we definitely did some of our own things. And then because I wasn't going to see the rest of my family until later after Christmas, the boys went to their dad's house that day, and I was just like you, Molly. I was left at home by myself, and that was the first time in my life, at 40, that I had been alone on Christmas Day. And that was a thought-provoking day. But it actually felt kind of empowering for me. I just went and spent time with my horses and actually rode, and so I had my animal friends with me, much like you have your dog, Molly. But that's it's a hard first year, and it's hard sharing your kids on holidays too, Paul. That's something I think our listeners can relate to, because that's tough. It's tough when you don't have them. And luckily, my ex-husband is never, made the kids stay at his house on Christmas Eve. He wants the kids to be happy, and he feels like he knows that being happy for them is being at home. But there are some families that, one Christmas is spent with mom and one Christmas is spent with dad, and that's hard stuff. It's hard stuff to deal with, for sure.
Do you think you should talk to the kids about it?
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
probably
absolutely.
Before Christmas, though.
Yeah.
Not on Christmas Day.
Not on Christmas Day, but I mean, before, if they're old enough, absolutely. I actually did some divorce coaching as a counselor, and really you just kind of stick to age appropriate conversations. And sometimes that's a little flexible, because sometimes, one 10-year-old is a lot less mature than another 10-year-old. So I feel like if you know your children like a parent should, then you kind of appropriately talk to them about the experience, because they're probably going to have some feelings that might surprise them as well, or they're not quite sure how to handle it. So yes, I'm all about open discussion with your kids surrounding those types of things, for sure.
But I'd recommend not on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And if you have Christmas dinner with relatives, that's not the time to fix anybody. That's not the time to tell your brother-in-law that you don't like him, or that he's a jerk, or what they did with the will when Daddy died wasn't fair, or whatever's going on. Make your Christmas meal with others a positive time. Don't bring up politics if half of them are on one side, half are the other, and they're going to fist fight with each other over it, or if they have huge religious differences, don't. I just think Christmas, when you get together with relatives at a Christmas dinner, it ought to be a positive time, and I wouldn't bring up anything that causes discord, or there's a lot of family members that decide that's when they're going to bring up a family conflict and try to resolve it. That's a lousy thing to do. You can talk about those things other times, and with your kids too. Yeah. Talking with them a day before Christmas or 2 days before about, are you going to miss your dad in the morning, and stuff like that. You can talk to them about it, and they can share and get it out in the open, so they won't feel so awkward when it happens. But on Christmas Day, I would avoid trying to heal anybody.
Yeah, that's good advice, Paul. I think this has been in the media, and this is kind of a relevant discussion around the holidays, is hugs. There's been something on social media or on, in the news about hugs and having to give, forced to give hugs to relatives. And should you have to hug, your creepy uncle or whatever, I think that becomes an issue, and I mean, I feel like you should talk to your kids about, do you feel comfortable? And some people just aren't comfortable being touched. My mother is one of them. I mean, even when she hugs me, it's like a standoffish little pat on the back, and she's just extremely uncomfortable. She's never had a pedicure in her life. She's never had a massage. She just don't want anybody touching her. So,
but hugs are great for people that like them. I like hugs, and I tell people four hugs a day keeps the doctor away. So I'm a hugger. But if there's people that are uncomfortable with it, then don't force yourself on them.
Yeah.
I had a great aunt who used to who used to give us big wet kisses on the face, and that was like the most uncomfortable thing. But because she was, and I love her. She lived to be 100. She was a wonderful woman, godly woman. But it would just, she was like probably about 70 or 80 by the time, I was like a teenager, and it was just creepy, so, but I never got to talk. It was like, you respect your elders. You don't get a choice. You basically have to do it, so.
That's funny. Paul, were you going to jump on to New Year's?
Yeah.
Let's move on to that.
I was going to say, before we run out of time, it'd be good to talk about, New Year's.
And New Year's resolutions.
A lot of my clients, come in and they have these huge New Year's resolutions. I'm going to lose 40 pounds this year, and I'm going to, double my savings, and I'm going to do this and that and the other thing. And I encourage people not to even make resolutions. New Year's. Don't make big plans. And I might be wrong. Maybe it's a good idea to make some resolutions, but you don't want to spend the whole coming year being disappointed that you didn't live up to your unrealistic expectations. So New Year's resolutions is one thing that, and you guys might disagree with me on that, but I just recommend that people not make New Year's resolutions. That's just my personal feeling.
I used to make them, and I found them to be very depressing, just like you were saying. I would never, within a month or two, it's like, oh, well, just might as well, beating yourself up all the time about it. What I do now, or try to do, is try to come up with one word a word of expectation that I have for the year to come. So, what do I want? What's a word that describes how I want my year to be in the future, So, it might be the year of change, or the year of gaining more knowledge, or whatever, some
loving more,
like that. Yeah.
Learning how to love more, becoming more like Jesus, or, those are reasonable things.
Right. So it's not like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Have I checked it off my list? It's more like a holistic viewpoint of the whole year. What do I want the whole year to be about? I think that's.
And I like to look back. I like at New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve for me is one of the biggest holidays. I feel like whoever you spend New Year's Eve with are your true friends.
Yes.
The people that you want to bring the new year in with are, I encourage people to be with people on New Year's Eve that you really love and care about. And then one other thing I do on New Year's Eve is look back over the past year and try to think positive thoughts. What are some good things that happened this past year? And, when negative things happen, when you have crises in the previous year, what did you learn from them? I had cancer in the springtime. Fortunately, I was able to get radiation, and it's gone now. But it made me think, about life is one day at a time, and I can't count on being here next year at New Year's. Nobody can. And so thinking spiritually, and I want every day of my coming year to count, and just growing. I want to grow. So even the bad things that happened to me this year were good things, because I'm more mature having gone through that than I was if I didn't go through that. And I don't, earlier in the year I would have, if somebody would have said, "Do you hope you get cancer this year?" I would have said, "No way," But now that I look back, I'm glad it happened because I really learned I learned to grow. And most people, when they get old, like me, anybody older, if you ask them what's the time in your life when you experience the most growth, it's almost always during their most dramatic crisis in their lives. And so even if you had a crisis this past year, think about how much you've grown and learned from it. But look back over the year and think about the good things too that happened to you and how you dealt with the negative things, how you were strong and people helped you or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Paul. I think really with New Year's resolutions, it's kind of a personality type thing. I think for some people it's great, and they want to have accountability to themselves, and sometimes it can really help them reach a goal. And then sometimes, you have the overachievers that probably aren't going to meet their expectations regardless. So I do think more it's kind of it's a personality type and knowing yourself and not putting pressure on yourself like that. So I guess what I would say would be a great idea would just be to focus on balance. You think about gyms at the beginning of the years and all throughout college, I worked in gyms and was a personal trainer to make extra money as a college student. And boy, I hated the beginning of the year working in a gym because it was suffocating because so many people came in and you knew by the second week, sometimes even the first week of February, it had half of the people that were coming in were gone. Some people only made it through 1 week. But that's how gyms make money. So, but
yeah,
exactly.
They get thousands of people that sign a one year deal for a gym, and then 2 weeks later they're done. That's like buying a boat at Christmas. You buy a boat once and you take it out a few times and then
it
sits
in your
there
yard.
and
It's a yard ornament.
In the
yeah,
wherever you got to pay for it to sit.
Yeah, this is a good question. Like, I feel like this is me, the life coach Melanie, kicking in. Why do you set expectations of yourself just in the new year? Want more for yourself. It's not what you're expecting of yourself, but want more for yourself and others and to give more all the time, not just in not just in the new year. I mean, a new year is a great time to out with the old, in with the new. And I think it is a great time for reflection, but increase the quality of your life all the time. And not just with how do you maintain that gumption that sometimes you have at the beginning of the year, and how do you feed yourself throughout the year to keep up whatever that momentum is? I mean, gosh, if we could do that, we'd all be in a better place, I guess. But reflection is, I guess, a word that comes to me when I think about New Year's. And I kind of agree with you, Paul. I think about New Year's in the past, and I am usually with friends that are very, very close to me. And there's always most of the time there's been joy surrounding those times. For some reason, on New Year's Eve, I always have a little sadness. I don't know if it's not even a little sadness. I think it's a lot of sadness. There's some loss associated, and I don't even really know what the loss is. Here's this person that analyzes herself all the time, and I'm not quite sure what that loss is about. But sometimes I get a real strong feeling of loss on New Year's Eve, and I'm just kind of quiet. I'm kind of quiet on New Year's Day. So maybe I'm just kind of internally reflecting, and I don't even know it. But do either one of you ever get that feeling on New Year's Eve, or is it just joy and good times?
I usually spend it alone with my dog, so yes.
Molly. Yeah,
Molly, you got to get some friends.
Yeah, Molly.
New Year's Eve is the time to get together with friends.
Yeah.
I used to do that in my younger years when I drank, but I don't drink anymore, so. I
think I feel sad sometimes. Part of New Year's Eve or the days a day or two before it. And I think even though I don't write down resolutions, in some ways I look back and I'm disappointed that I haven't accomplished more, and feel bad that false guilt that that I should have done more, or maybe it's true guilt in some cases, but
yeah.
But I think it's mostly false guilt. I don't know if that's what
Yeah,
yours is.
I think it probably is some false guilt going in there of just maybe having too high of expectations of myself. You know, one thing I always look forward to in the new year is my church has an annual bellwether address, and it is always extremely inspiring. It sets the tone for the church for the year. And like you said, Molly, they kind of choose words or a theme of what they're going to do. And I remember one bellwether address was just back to vanilla and chocolate. And they were really trying to just take it back to simple things. This is a church that had been a church for 40 years and extremely successful. And they just kind of felt like they were getting too much into everything and not sticking and just being simple. And I think they were feeling a little lost, because I think that just happens with growth whenever growth happens in a church. So I really enjoyed those, the bellwether addresses that we have at our church, because it's kind of a spiritual guide that everyone comes together the entire year and can congregate and share that movement, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing is give people the freedom to disagree with you. There's some, especially in the Christian community, but it's probably that way in secular communities too. But, you know, some people think some people actually think it's a sin to talk about Santa Claus or to even give presents or, you know, different, you know, traditions that people have. And other Christians think it's just fine. And, give both the freedom to be, you know, to interpret it their own way, because it's not real clear in Scripture, you know, what we should or shouldn't do at Christmas, and so give people the freedom. And if people talk about politics, you know, give people the freedom to be wrong. If you're right, they're wrong, you know. So, but you know, give people the freedom to be different than you. And,
yes, I love that statement. I think we'd be a lot happier world if we would just allow that. And I don't know why it bothers people so bad when people do something different. You know, each to his own. Whatever floats your boat, whatever it is that you want. You know, it just if whatever makes you happy. Maybe just use some judgment, and with your words. Maybe that's some really good advice, Paul and Molly. Like, be careful with your words around the holidays, because words are powerful. And just, you know, try to practice kindness, even if you don't want to. Just try to practice kindness. You know, I think about Christmas as being a peaceful time, and New Year's too. Sometimes I just think about peace. You know, everyone kind of comes together. So I think it's especially important to intentionally have times where you hold your tongue for the sake of something bigger. So
yeah, I think that's very true. And as I'm thinking about some of, you know, I have so many good memories of Christmas, but there are a couple Christmases where there were some really not very happy things happening, and some really harmful words were spoken, and those things stick in my mind equally as much as all of the many good Christmases. It may just be one Christmas where that happened, and, you know, that's kind of like seared in my brain also. So I think that's very good advice to just, you know, be kind with your words. I mean, we should be that way all the time, but especially more so during the holidays, because people a lot of times are struggling themselves through different things, and you never know what your words can do. They can give life, or they can steal it, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Something else I'm doing this Christmas is I started reading my when I was 10 years old, my mom taught me Psalm 1, and it's about the value of meditating on Scripture. And so she didn't tell me I had to do that, but she suggested that I read my Bible every day. And so I started doing that when I was 10, and I'm 72 now, and I still do that, and I've never stopped, almost every day. Mm. There's days that I don't want to, and once I start doing it, I'm glad I did. But I used to read consecutively through the Bible, in recent years, I'll pick out books I like Revelation or Proverbs or things like that. But just a few days ago, I decided, from now until Christmas, I'm going to read the Gospels. And so I'm going to, read through John and some of the other Gospels. And I don't spend a lot of time every day, maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes. But I'm going to read about the life of Jesus and his birth and things like that to sort of get in the spirit of Christmas.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, it's always good to turn to the very thing that, I guess holds Christianity together, is to make sure you're staying up with the Word, for sure. Well, I think we've had an awesome discussion tonight, guys, about things that can help you alleviate some of the stress that we deal with over the holiday. Paul, do you want to kind of round it out and bring up some of the points we made, and then we'll close?
Yeah, decide today, right now that you've shared, our listening family has shared this hour with us, make some decisions right now about what am I going to do and not do this Christmas with myself and with my family and my friends, so I won't be overly stressed, and so that the meaning of Christmas will be conveyed to the people that I love.
Yeah, that's great. How about you, Molly? Anything you want to add before we close?
I would just offer encouragement to the people who might be spending the holidays, alone or feeling alone. Try to find someone to, have a meal with, or sometimes even just helping other people. And getting outside of yourself is helpful. But just to be encouraged that you're not alone, that there are a lot of people who do spend the holidays by themselves and struggling through it. And, it's very easy to get lost in the shuffle, but just to be encouraged.
Yeah, I just thought about something, and I'll close with this. Something we used to do as a Girl Scout, and I love doing it every Christmas, and that was go to a nursing home. So, and just wrap a bar of soap or something, and take some of these people, older, the elderly are going to have no visitors on Christmas Day. And so if you are by yourself and you don't have anyone to spend it with, then you can certainly reach out to your church family, or you can just, volunteer somewhere else where there are also probably people that are alone. And I remember really, really enjoying doing that and singing little Christmas carols to people in nursing homes. So there's always something that you can reach out and do for others, or Angel Tree, or the Operation Hope, the boxes that you can send out. There's always something that you can do to try to reach out to others that don't have as much as you do, or if you know a family that's really struggling, just pitch in and help. Those are things that people don't forget, and those are, they end up being some of the best gifts, even if it's not a lot. Just your presence sometimes can be a great gift to someone over the holiday. So I want to thank both of you for coming on. Molly, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Dr. Meijer, as always, thank you for coming on. And as always, I want to make a shout out to Meijer Clinics. And we know that the holidays can be a tough time for some folks. So if you feel like you're really struggling with depression or anxiety, you can reach out to Meijer Clinics. Paul, do you have an 800 number?
Yeah, it's 888-7-CLINIC.
There we go.
You know what? I'm not sure what it is, but
let's look it up.
I forgot what it is.
That's
but
we can.
I think it's 888-7-CLINIC. I think it's 1-888-7-CLINIC. But if you go to Meijer Clinics,
yes,
www.meierclinics.com, then our clinics around the country will come up, and you can look for one in your area. Or if there's not one in your area, you can either come to one of our day programs out of state, or you can call us and we'll help you find somebody in your area if we know somebody.
All right, I've got the number right here, Paul. It's 888. I don't think we've ever said that on the show. 888-725-4642. So it's probably 888-7-CLINIC.
1-888-7-CLINIC.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So, Paul, does someone answer that 24/7 or no?
Yeah.
They do?
Yeah.
So it's almost... Yeah. Okay, so if you call that
different
number,
people in different regions of the country. So.
Okay, so if you call that number, if you're struggling, someone's going to pick up the line.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on, and I want to thank our listeners for another edition of Mental Health News Radio.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next time for another engaging discussion on relevant mental health topics. If you have any questions about Meijer Clinics, please visit our website at meijerclinics.com. That's MEIER clinics.com, or call us at 888-7-CLINIC. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps. And please note that we are a member of and produced by Mental Health News Radio Network, MHNRnetwork.com.